Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Hey y'all, welcome to an episode of the Black Doctor Collective podcast. If you weren't aware, we are now on YouTube, so that's pretty exciting. Let me turn on my little light so you guys can get the razzle dazzle. You can start to view old episodes and now all of our current episodes weekly on YouTube. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, so this week I am doing a first quarter review. First of all, it's April, so I'm shocked at the fact that we're already a quarter of the way through the year. Like, what? 2024? And we even got an extra day this year. It's still feeling fast. But I wanted to spend some time going back over the first quarter because I needed to review anyway. And I feel like I just wanted to let you guys in on all the tea. I like to give you updates on like everything that's going on, what I'm negotiating. And so I'm going to talk about 3 big lessons that I took away from this quarter and what that means for you. I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but well, if this is your first one, I do locums pediatric work, which means I'm a contractor in different sites depending on their needs. Some of these jobs are short. Last fall, I covered someone's maternity leave, and some of these jobs are long. I worked at a refugee camp in 2 different phases of their project for about a year. So they really vary. I love locums work, but I hate how it works, if that makes sense. It's essentially like working for a temp agency, right? You find a job through this agency, they partner you with a clinic or a hospital, and then they get paid for every hour that you work. And the rate can vary depending on what you accept. So let's say I decided I'm going to work for a rate of $150. They could be charging the hospital $300 an hour and making the other $150 per hour that I work. So it can vary. They can make as much as you work or like 50%, something like that. But they already agreed to make $300 an hour from the hospital. So if I decide I want to make $160 or $170, that means they earn less. And if I decide I'm willing to accept $110, that means that they earn more. It just irks me that someone who just literally, their one job is to connect me to a clinic or a hospital is rewarded either the same amount as me or just slightly less for every hour that I work. Some rando in an office building or even in their house, because remote work is real, with no medical degree is making almost dollar for dollar what I make. Tell me that doesn't piss you off. It pisses me off when they try to convince me to earn less. Oh, sometimes I have to go off on them. I'm not going to lie. I'm not always nice to the recruiters because I realize that they are scamming me and it just makes me upset. I decided I'm going to start looking for some per diem opportunities, which means I work hourly the same way I would for a locums agency, but I'm cutting out the agency. I'm just going to work directly for that practice. It's still a contract employment opportunity. I still expect them to cover my malpractice, but I will remove that element of the locums agency. I found a job last December. I decided to reach out to a clinic that a friend of mine worked at last summer. She was a locums for them. And honestly, if they're accepting locums, obviously they're short staffed. Maybe they're looking to hire. I shot them an email. I shot my shot. Sent them a little email. Said, if you're hiring, I don't know that you are, but if you are, please consider me. I attached my CV. I said how I knew them, that I'd heard of them through my friend who obviously had a good reputation there, so that helps. And they wrote me back and said, yes, they are in the market for a pediatrician. They want to hire. Great. Okay. I didn't start until February, so it took about 2 months of going back and forth with them, setting it up, negotiating my hourly rate before I was even ready to start. It was a really long process. The practice is run by a physician, a pediatrician, and her husband. Sometimes the husband who was in charge of the negotiations was taking like a week and a half to reply to me. And in that time your brain is doing a whirl, right? Because I'm presenting the rate I want to get paid at. And we're kind of going back and forth and trying to find something that's going to work for both of us. And each time you ask, right, there's just like that niggling feeling that like, oh, maybe you've asked for too much. Oh, what if they decide not to go with you because you are, staying firm to your offer? I have all the same thoughts that I coach my clients through. That's how I know how to coach them and how things are coming up. So I was going through the same emotions and the process was taking a long time. And I don't know what point my brain decided that I wanted the job more than I wanted my top salary number. I don't know. But the story I was telling myself was that this job was super convenient. It's in New York City. I so often do locums outside of New York. And I live in a hotel more than half the year, which, let me tell you, has some really good perks. I'm not going to lie. But it also has some deficits, right? Not being home, not eating home cooked food. I gained a lot of weight living in a hotel because I ate out all the time. Not having access to my wardrobe, not being close to my family. There's just a lot of things, right? So I thought, okay, this would be such a happy medium where I get to sleep at home in my bed every day. But I also have this contract work where I work hourly. I still get paid hourly because to me, salaries always feel threatening in that they like to add on more work and it's all included in whatever number they decided to pay you. Or if they decide to change it at any point, which companies are wont to do, they can make an addendum to your contract. They can ask you to do more and you end up doing more and more and more. And so that's one of the things that I'm still afraid of in signing a full-time contract. And so I don't sign them. So I thought this would be the perfect scenario. And because I built it up in my mind that this was the answer to what I was looking for, I ended up accepting a rate that was less than what I wanted. And I like to judge. My brain has a lot of judgments. There's a lot of judgments happening. It is one of my lowest rates to date. I'm not going to lie. Although it's still higher than rates I've seen accepted amongst pediatricians, it's not one that I'm like excited about. So I had to stop myself from being super judgy about it because I was telling myself all kinds of things like, what kind of negotiator are you? And you end up with a rate that's lower than what you've worked yourself up to. There's a lot of criticisms happening in my brain. And I stopped myself by thinking, okay, I'm actually proud because I did go back and forth. I did hold out a really long time. I did have a significant rate increase compared to what they were initially offering me because they were initially trying to offer chickpeas. And so we came up a lot from what the practice owner was offering, but still lower than what I know I can earn. At some point, though, I told myself that the number was okay. I kind of fell out of my own process, and I'm reflecting now on why that happened. I also had to reflect because I have not been great about promoting my coaching offer. I've been, sharing on Instagram like I normally do, checking boxes, but if you're on my email list, which if you're not, you should be, I haven't sent an email in about 3 weeks. Don't tell my coach. But I started this slow shutdown. And I'm going to explain exactly why that happened. But I think it's important that initially I didn't see how this contract and this negotiation process was also harming my business. And I want to point it out because a lot of us think that a lot of us don't realize that what we negotiate and how we treat ourselves and how we think of ourselves directly impacts like everything. So I often think areas of my life are compartmentalized. I think I'm pretty good at compartmentalization to a certain degree. When I think about medicine, there could be things going on in my life, and when I get to work, I'm focused on the work, I'm focused on the patient, I'm focused on the scenario, and I could be so entrenched in that all the other stuff kind of falls away. But I don't always see how things in one area are affecting things in another area. And I know y'all know that there are like how some of the areas of our life can bleed together. I know cases where stress from work has bled into my home life. I know how a fight I'm having with such and such makes my mood worse. Like there's just areas that just infiltrate. And so there's definitely plenty of scenarios where one thing affects another. And I don't know why in my mind I did not connect the dots. But thankfully I have a coach who connected the dots for me, or helped me to connect the dots really. So starting this job, all the things I tell my clients to do, all the conversations I tell them to have, the questions to ask, the preliminary groundwork that I think is absolutely necessary for creating a good work environment from the beginning, I did not do for this job. And it literally created the exact scenario I try to help other people avoid. It's the exact reason I created my framework, because these jobs be on some bullshit. So I have a framework that sets things up for me nicely that I use with all my other doctors, my doctor clients, to make sure their work environment is conducive for their success. But I wasn't doing what I was preaching, and I fell out of integrity, and this was affecting my coaching business. There's a part of our brain that wants to keep us honest. I think especially as doctors, we like to think of ourselves as having good integrity, having high integrity. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the metrics of like how do you measure integrity, how do you measure success? Because if you don't have metrics, that's how you fall into the traps of doing what other people want you to do. So I'll get back to that point in a bit. But basically, I fell out of integrity with my own process. Something about this being a new scenario, this being a per diem opportunity, which is different from a locums opportunity, made the evidence of previous successful negotiations go away, disappear. I've literally been negotiating for years, but somehow this felt really new and different. And I'm actually glad I had this experience, because I think you guys as doctors, anytime you enter a new type of job where you're moving from training to being an attending, or you're switching some kind of thing, there's something that our brain does that says, oh, but this is new. This is not going to work the way it worked in the past. This new scenario presents itself, and somehow I feel like I don't quite understand how all the terms work. That it's a new area, it's new ground that I have to learn. And it made me scale back what I asked for, how much I asked for, the questions I asked. It made me less confident about what I was asking for, and I did not follow my process. And then what happened was the job started, but everything was so messy. It has been so messy. It was so messy because I didn't follow the process. And at some point, when I say at some point, I mean because my coach called me out on it, but my coach asked me, am I using my process? And I had to say no. That was a good moment for me, because then I was able to actually lean into the framework, and it clarified why I felt the way I felt and why things had gone wrong. And now I feel way more powerful, even in the scenario, even though I've chosen, as of right now, not to leave, to stick there. I realized that in asking all the questions and creating my own metrics, clarifying everything up front, it's a much better experience to start a job that way, rather than not asking anything up front or not asking all the things up front, and then having this prolonged conversation over the first month, which is what happened, where we're just trying to still settle the baseline understanding between what I want, between what I provide, what they're looking for, what they want. So the first lesson is that I need to lean into my own self-trust. My relationship with myself is the most important part of every negotiation. The way I create self-trust is by developing my own metrics with myself. I mentioned earlier that our brains want to keep us in integrity. When we let our employers define for us what it means to be a good doctor, a team player, then they can also tell us that we're not meeting that measure. We're not up to par. If they define it, then anything that we do that they think counters it means that that's not who we are. I like to identify as a good employee. I think I'm a great doctor. I think I am a team player, and lots of other adjectives. So when someone told me in the past that's not what I was doing, then I would try to work harder to prove that's who I was and that I was a team player. And that usually meant by meeting their metrics of it. So if they said, you're not a team player because you're not willing to stay after work or you just run out of the door, then I was going to show them that I was going to stay late and make sure things were done. I did this a lot in residency. I was known for staying well after call to finish everything, to make sure everything was done. Sometimes I was eating lunch at the hospital at the 30-hour mark because I just had to finish everything and make sure it was good. And I wanted to show and prove that I was this exemplary resident. Whenever you have something that's part of your identity, I want you to spend some time just identifying what are things that you say that you are. I say I'm a good communicator. I say I have great interpersonal skills. I say that I go above and beyond. Define that for yourself, because if you don't, if you fall into their definition, as soon as they say that you're not doing it, you're going to want to work harder. You're going to fight them to show that you are that thing. We have to be able to identify all of the behaviors, all of the metrics that currently exist that are meeting those metrics, so that no one can tell you something about yourself that's not true. If I believe I'm smart and I know why I'm smart, then there's no way someone's going to come along and be like, oh, Shanika, you're so stupid. Because I'm going to look at them like they're stupid. You don't know me. Listen, I made it through medical school. I have done this, because in my mind, I know what smart means. I know how I define it, and I've checked those boxes. Perfect example of this was within I started a week early at this job. They had someone quit short notice, and I decided I'm going to help them out and start early. It means I didn't have an orientation, which again, compacted the fact that I hadn't asked a lot of my preliminary questions, but I felt really good about it because it was I'm starting work early. I'm going to get more money. This is great. And then also I feel a little bit like a savior. Here I come. I'm saving the day. They're in need. Look at me. I'm helping. And I love to be helpful and I love to be liked. So I just thought, they're just going to love me for this. I'm going above and beyond. I feel good about it. There's benefits for me here, both emotional and financial. So fast forward to about 2 weeks in where, it's March and I know that I have my birthday trip coming up at the end of April. And so I asked the office manager, hey, how far in advance do you need to receive leave? And she told me, a month. And I said, well, you know what? Let me tell you 2 months in advance that I'm taking this trip. My birthday's coming up. I'm turning 40 this year, y'all. I know, black don't crack. I look like a fresh yolk. Thank you. But I had this trip planned. And so lo and behold, the husband, the owner, calls me and is chastising me and basically saying that I have the attitude of an employee that does not care because I did not ask to take my vacation time. And I just told them when I was going to take them, irregardless as to what they had to say about it. Let me tell you, that pissed me off. But he doesn't work in the clinic. I've never actually met this man. This man called me after hours on my day off to tell me this. So I was pissed about that. I felt like he was violating my boundaries. I answered the phone because I didn't realize who it was, but also because, and I had the conversation with him. Here's where he messed up. I know I'm a team player. He was trying to say I'm not a team player because I'm taking vacation and all this stuff. He was implying a lot of things on the call, but I'm really certain about who I am and what I bring to an environment. So I immediately was like, it's interesting how you're chastising me about requesting leave 2 months in advance. How? And he was like, well, I should have known about this. I said, how far in advance do you want your leave? He said, oh, 3 months. I said, that's funny because the office manager told me 1 month. And where's the policy on it? Because there wasn't one. There's no employee handbook. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And because, again, I didn't follow my process and ask all the questions, I don't know what their policy is on leave. So I just asked and casually submitted something. I sent them the full, like, I'm out for 2 weeks. I don't even work there every day. I work every Thursday and every other Friday. So really, in this 2-week period, I'm missing about 3 shifts. Instead, they were like, you're taking 2 weeks off. And I said, the only reason I told you about my dates is because I know that you're short-staffed. And if you think I'm going to cover, if you think you can rely on me to cover some of these dates where you don't have another doctor there, I'm letting you know in advance that you should plan ahead to have maybe a locums provider or someone else come in because I'm not available in this time frame at all. It's not just that I'm missing these 3 days. 3 days, y'all. I covered an extra week in advance, and since I've been there, I only signed up to do 2 days a week. I've covered sometimes up to 4 days a week. So I was really able to demonstrate to him that I go above and beyond, and I'm a team player, and I'm committed to your practice. Look at the ways in which I've shown up. And because I had those things ready to say, it was like I could make my point in an evidence-based way and defend my point. And he had to back down on what he was saying to me because what I was saying was accurate. So I think one of the things that carries me through in any scenario where people come and challenge me and try to imply that I'm not who I say I am or not who they expect me to be, the thing that carries me through is that I have strong metrics for myself. I have practiced defining what success looks like for me. So getting criticized in the first 2 weeks, because I'm constantly reflecting on the ways that I have successfully contributed to the practice, the ways I have gone above and beyond, it's really hard for him to come and tell me otherwise. And I was readily able to give examples of how what he was saying was not true. And he had to acknowledge that what I was saying was evidence-based. And so it gave me the insight that it is so important to do this for yourself, so that you aren't thrown off by other people's criticisms. And I don't like criticism, y'all. I saw this funny meme the other day. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but it basically says, when I'm asking for feedback, I really mean just give me compliments. And that is me in a nutshell. If you are giving me feedback, I need it in a sandwich form. I need you to start with a compliment. I need to give me some constructive feedback in the middle, and then finish with more compliments because I'm awesome. So if you come at me sideways, first of all, I'm going to feel defensive and I'm going to respond defensively. But I like when I respond defensively in an evidence-based way, like with this conversation with this man, because you don't want to seem defensive and get backed into a corner. Then now you still have to prove it and you feel bad and the whole thing is a mess and you go into a mind spiral about how you have not lived up to the things you believe about yourself. Also, there's nothing worse than having an argument where you think of all the things you could have said after the argument is over. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all have all the snappy comebacks after the argument is done. And you don't have another opportunity, like there's not another window in which you can say the things you really wanted to say to that person. Having metrics does that for you, because I quickly was able to respond and say, don't challenge me on these things. That's not true. Let me tell you how I have shown up, what it means to be a contributory employee in this business. And no, I'm not treating your office carelessly by submitting 2 weeks of vacation. And this is why I submitted the 2 weeks. It was a well thought out process. I know what I'm doing. I have offered a lot more to this clinic than what you have asked me for. And therefore, if you're going to come at me and criticize me, please make sure that you have balanced all the things I have also done. Like, this is an awkward conversation because you don't know all the things I've done because you don't actually work in the clinic. So there was that. This is literally where confidence comes from. I get a lot of questions about how to be a confident negotiator, how to be a confident self-advocate. This is it. My client just the other day, I have a lovely doctor client who said one of her metrics was to be a confident negotiator. And I had to point out to her that it's not always that I feel bold and very clear. I don't always have the right exact perfect thing to say, and I don't always get the right exact perfect response. Confidence actually is really courage. You need to be a courageous negotiator. It's that even when you feel uncomfortable, you still ask for what you need. That's what makes you appear confident, is that there can be an uncomfortable moment, but in that moment, you are still staying firm on what you're asking for. That is what people perceive as confidence. It's not that you feel that you're right or that you know for sure that everything you ask for is what you deserve. That may not actually be true. That exact perfect scenario may not exist. I find when I'm coaching doctors that we all want to be really sure, really evidence-based, really confident about what we're asking for, and that what we're asking for is true and reasonable. So, for example, when it's time to negotiate salary, when we're trying to come up with what we think is a reasonable salary, we want to look at the research. We want to look at MGMA data. We want to know what everybody else is earning, because there's something about seeing the numbers or knowing that salary exists. There's something about knowing that number exists makes us more confident about asking for it. I think having any discussion around salary makes us more confident, feel more confident. You'll see that a lot in a lot of these Facebook groups where people are asking, oh, well, what did you get? What was reasonable for you? Things like that. So when you don't have evidence, the thing is you're often afraid to ask, or you just don't ask. The thing is, if you're afraid to ask for something, then you won't ask for it, and then you don't get it. And that's one of the lessons I've learned. So I always encourage you guys to acknowledge that you feel uncomfortable and ask anyway. Because I think it's worse feeling the discomfort that you didn't ask. I have had more than once a scenario where I thought it was unreasonable to ask for less than 4 days a week. So I would say, oh, I'll work 4 days a week because I know I don't want to work 5, but let me ask for 4. That seems more reasonable. And then I walked into that job the first day and realized that nobody else in that job was working 4 days. They were all working 2 to 3 days. And I felt like the ultimate sucker, because it's not that I wanted to work 4 days, is I was too afraid to ask for 3. That was another example that I've learned about asking for what it is you want. So lesson 2 is actually that confidence is actually courage. Lesson 3 is that you should always be evaluating. After I realized that this job was not everything I wanted it to be, because I was having first it was them calling me about me requesting too much vacation. Then we had a back and forth about how they didn't expect to pay me to be on call and that they wanted me to do calls 2 weeks out of the month. I only work 2 days a week. How am I going to be on call for 2 weeks of the month? That's even more days than I actually work in the clinic. You want me to be available, coherent. Like, that means I can't be out having a good time, having a little drink with my meal, because I got to be worried about being on call. Like, you want to consume half of my month and not pay me for it, and you think that the rate that you're offering me already includes that. This taps right back into the fact that I had accepted a rate that was lower than what I wanted. And so imagine accepting a rate lower than what I wanted, and they want to include an exorbitant amount of calls schedule, which of course I fought them tooth and nail on, because no way that I'm working all of that extra for free $99. I'm already giving y'all a discount, which I shouldn't have given. So I would say, like, pissed off money You want to make money. You want to make enough money in your salary that when they piss you off, you don't feel like, and I'm getting underpaid, right? You should be like, at least I'm getting my money because these people are tripping. And you're a lot more, it's a lot easier in your mind to rectify the fact that people are acting out of pocket because your pockets are full. Great. Okay. I realized the job wasn't what I wanted it to be, and I started using my process for measuring my performance, and I started asking myself for what I wanted, and then I started asking them for what I wanted and sticking to my guns. And I had to remember in this process, always be evaluating. If you do all the steps and the environment still isn't working out, there's still an option to leave, and that is part of the evaluation. Do I stay or do I go? Again, for me, I always need to have this option on the table, which is why I build my contracts with the flexibility to be able to leave when I need to leave. I don't want to be in a scenario that I've signed a 2 to 3 year contract with some kind of financial penalty and I'm stuck there, because that also removes my feelings of power. It makes me feel powerless. I forgot that I had the option to leave. I somehow in my mind removed that option, and I kept thinking, I just need to figure this out. I just need to figure this out. I just need to express my needs. I just need to. And I was feeling actually hopeless. I started getting the Sunday scaries. It's like the feeling you get of dread before the work week starts. And I say the Sunday scaries because I also, in covering them extra hours, had agreed to work a couple of Mondays in March. I worked like 3 or 4 Mondays in March, almost a whole month. I worked Mondays, which was not on our original offer, which they love to quote our original offer. But look at the ways in which I am not sticking to the original offer and giving you more than what you wanted, or giving you more of what you want. And so I started getting the Sunday scaries. And it's not a feeling I've had in a long time. So for me, it's like a warning bell. It's a warning siren that things are not going well and I need to evaluate what's going on. One of the things I know about myself is I have very specific patterns or feelings when I get uncomfortable. It manifests the same way every time. So if I'm uncomfortable, I start to get the Sunday scaries. I start to feel pressure in my chest. I start to feel tension. In my jaw. I don't sleep well. This is why I'm very protective of my peace, because it starts to impact the way my body feels. It starts to impact the way I sleep. I can't be going through all of that. Listen, I can't stay a fresh yolk and be stressed. You see, you guys can't see. Maybe on the YouTube you guys can see. I developed a little bit of a gray patch right in the front. Y'all not gonna be stressing me and giving me stress grays. I don't want it. So when I'm in a job I don't like, or a job in which they are pushing me to do things that I do not want to do, or to be not paid or doing unpaid work, I get the Sunday scaries. I get tension in my body. I develop poor sleep habits. Once I start to feel the pressure in my chest, the heaviness that it creates in my body, that is a signal. It's a warning sign for me that I need to be evaluating. Do I stay or do I go? One thing I tell my clients, or I ask my clients, is identify the feeling in your body when you're uncomfortable. Where do you feel it? Because if you can learn to recognize discomfort in your body, then you can understand your motivation for certain things. Am I just trying to problem solve, get out of this negotiation because it's creating the butterflies in my tummy? Am I agreeing to something I don't really want to agree to because this scenario makes me feel pressure on my shoulders, makes my shoulders tight and my neck muscles tight? Is that the sensation that makes me do things that I don't really want to do, that makes me agree to scenarios I don't really want to be in? If you can learn to recognize discomfort in your body, then you can address it by self-soothing. So I'm like, oh, okay, I feel uncomfortable. Let me take a deep breath. There's nothing wrong in this scenario. It's just me asking for what I need. it's not crazy to do this. Yes, I feel uncomfortable, but yes, I also want this thing and I'm going to proceed. Or this feels too uncomfortable. I'm not willing to continue feeling this, so I'm going to succumb to what they want me to do rather than what I want to do. That is always a choice. But I don't want to, for me, I don't want to act from the place of discomfort where I'm just trying to make myself feel better in that moment, because it always leads to this scenario where for a longer period of time, I am stuck dealing with the scenario that I don't want to be in. So I end up in a terrible job situation with unfavorable hours or with some other condition that I allowed because in the moment when I was asked about it or when I had the opportunity to speak up about it, I felt too uncomfortable to keep going. So understanding and evaluating is the third lesson of the quarter. So the top 3 lessons, I'll just review quickly, was to build self-trust by creating your own metrics, by defining what it means to you to be a good person, a good doctor, a team player, a person that goes above and beyond. If those things are important to you, define that for yourself. What does that look like? For me, it looks like spending quality time with my patients, running clinic on time. That means when I stand up to double bookings, it's because I feel that creating the patient experience is door to door. Their wait time shouldn't be too long. They should get quality time in the room. Those things can't happen if I agree to be double booked or I don't protest being double booked. So knowing the metrics for myself really creates the environment that I want to work in. Always be evaluating that work environment. Always evaluate, is this a good place for me? Have I been able to self-advocate? Do they accept what I'm asking for and make the changes? Are they willing to accommodate, etc.? If they're not willing to do those things, then I need to evaluate again. Do I stay or do I go? And knowing that I have those options brings the power back into my hands. It relieves the tension in my body. I can stand up for myself. I can self-advocate. And if that does not work, I can remove myself, because that is also parts of self-advocacy and self-preservation. And then the last important point is a confident negotiator is just a courageous one. It's actually a courageous negotiator. It means being able to sit in discomfort in order to get what you want, just long enough to get what you want. So those are my 3 lessons of the quarter. Where I am now, I mean, I've been having some really honest, frank conversations with the practice owner, the doctor owner, about what would need to change. I don't think the scenario in this clinic is so terrible that it can't be fixed, but they just have to be willing to fix it. And again, for me, I know in my mind that I'm choosing to be there because it works for right now. And when it does not serve me and when it does not work for me, or it becomes toxic or abusive in any way, that I trust myself to remove myself from that scenario. And just that simple thought process, it wasn't even the fact that I chose not to leave, right? You can stay in an environment that isn't the best, but because you realize that you're exercising your choices, your whole energy can shift, your whole dynamic can shift. I don't feel stressed about it. I mean, there's still some stress. Let's not be fake. I don't feel the way I felt the first month that I worked there. This week, I have had a lot of conversations with them about what's dysfunctional. And because every other provider at this point has now quit and it's just me and the practice owner, I think she's probably more open to hearing the suggestions. And I hope that it works out, because again, it is kind of convenient. Do I want to be paid more? Sure. Will I work call for free? Absolutely not. Have we figured those things out exactly? Not yet, but I always have options, and that is what makes me feel powerful, and that's what makes me a courageous negotiator. So that's all I have for you this week. I'm so glad you tuned in. Thank you so much. For those joining on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Hit the bell notification. These podcasts are every week. If you're listening on an audio platform, don't forget to like, to share, do all the things you do with all your favorite podcasts. I appreciate you. Let me know if these lessons are important for you and how they have helped you. I love hearing you guys' feedback. It really keeps me going. Send me a DM. Waiting to hear from you. All right. Have a great week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.